want to thank you all. Thank you for attending this webinar, and thank you for all you've done throughout this entire time. Just really appreciate all of the community's support and partnership during all of this. And so we are going to be talking this evening about some virtual options for next year. I do want to emphasize that we do have in-person summer school, and we have in-person school for the fall with the regular schedules. And I also want to encourage everyone, we are hosting a vaccination clinic starting next week, Tuesday through Saturday at Pittsburgh High School. It'll be from 8 to 3. You should have received messages today with the details of how you can make an appointment, but they will also accept walk-ins. And so this is for anyone who is 12 and older. It doesn't have to just be a student. If you and your family want to come, you are more than welcome as well too. Also, all of the vaccination sites in Contra Costa County are now open to 12 and older and are open for walk-in appointments. But again, at Pittsburgh High School in the gymnasium, you're familiar with that area. We have everything set for parking, for a cool place to wait, and everything as well too for your appointment Tuesday through Saturday. And that's starting next week on May 25th. So again, thank you, and looking forward to answering any questions that we can. We will be doing this in Spanish on Thursday as well, and we are recording both webinars, and so we will have them for people to view after as well too. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Molina to kick off the presentation, and I'll interact with you in the chat and the Q&A and answer any questions that I can. Thank you.
Mr. Molina, you're on mute.
How many times have we heard that this year?
Too many times.
We've heard that too.
But thank you, thank you. So just as a reminder, everyone, please, your questions in the question and answer button. We do have a number of staff from throughout the district here to start and try to answer your questions before we get to the end of the webinar, but hopefully we will answer many of them as we go. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. And so again, you're here this evening for the virtual learning opportunities that Pittsburgh Unified School District will be offering in the fall of 2021, which is next fall school year. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind our community that Pittsburgh Unified School District is committing to opening full-on in-person in the fall. In fact, we're going to be opening this summer, as Dr. Schultz just shared. And so with that, I just want to make sure that everyone and all of our families feel comfortable in knowing that we're absolutely keeping up with the most recent guidelines that the county and state health officials are giving us, that our schools and classrooms are absolutely ready for learning. They're ready to receive scholars now, and that absolutely our schedules are being prepared for in-person learning in the fall of 2021. What does that mean? That means that the Pittsburgh Unified School District's 2021-22 school year will begin with the first full day of instruction back to school in August, and is specifically on August 11th of 2021. That also means that we'll have regular schedules. It's not going to be a hybrid like you're hearing other districts are using currently under the most current guidelines, but we're going to be looking at a Monday through Friday regular time schedule. And I put 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Those are approximate times, but they'll follow the schedules for your child's school. That also means that all of our school sites will be open to students. That means all 8 of our elementaries, 3 junior high schools, 2 high schools, and our adult ed campus will be open for all students. And that also means full class sizes. So that means your child will be coming to school with all of their peers to learn in a safe environment where academics and social emotional intelligence are emphasized in their fullest. In order to make sure that we have a safe campus and that we prioritize safety, we'll be looking at our protocols and procedures and following them accordingly. All of our protocols and procedures are directly aligned with the California Department of Public Health. That includes, up until recently, and we'll see what the governor's direction, our county health, face coverings, proper distancing inside and outside of the classrooms, healthy hygiene practices such as washing hands frequently, teaching especially our young scholars how to wash their hands and to keep them clean and free of germs. Social emotional learning for how to integrate back into the campuses at our schools, making sure we have the proper ventilation, right? So as we're using our HVAC system, our air systems, that we have the proper filtration. Cleaning and disinfecting our campuses, training staff and families on what the safe practices are and how to use these protocols. And then, of course, having our own personal safety checks for any signs or symptoms of possible exposure to COVID-19. That goes for staff, students, and family. And last but not least, we have all of our teams at our sites trained to contact trace, meaning that if there is a case that is ever on our campuses, we would know immediately how to trace where that contact occurred and who was possibly exposed. The excitement is building. We know that many students are excited to come back to school. In fact, our motto, our slogan, the superintendent says it all the time, every scholar, every day. And we truly mean that here in Pittsburgh. And we know that people are excited because our summer school numbers are increasing every day with scholars who want to come back to school for that in-person learning. With that being said, just as all of our students have different reasons for why they want to come back to school. Some of them just want to be with their friends. Some of them want to participate in activities such as band or choir, or clubs such as robotics or AVID. And some want to really just get in and spend the time, studying in person, asking their teacher questions, feeling like they have maybe more access to some of the different books or materials that are in our schools that maybe they don't always have at home. But we also know that we have some students, like student X, who might be doing perfectly well and might have some reasons why they can't come back to school and participate fully in the fall in-person learning. And for that is why we are here tonight, is to talk about those options for the students who may not be able to come back. With that said, I would like to just review very quickly our current programs that we have within the district for academic learning. We have our pre-K through 12 and adult education, general education programs that serves over 10,000 students at 14 campuses. We have a current long-term independent study program, which is run as the Pittsburgh Independent Learning Center. We call it PILC for short. You may be hearing that term throughout the night. The vast majority of the students enrolled in this current long-term independent study program are really school-age students coming from Pittsburgh High School and Black Diamond High School. There are some exceptions, but the majority of the students in the long-term independent study program are from the high schools. The short-term independent study program is a program that supports scholars and families needing just a short-term independent learning option. And that's outside of the regular class learning time. And this is sometimes when a family must go out of the country or when there's some sort of necessary emergency, but it's short term. And it must be for more than 5 consecutive days of absence. And last but not least, we have the home hospital option, which is instruction available for students with temporary medical disabilities, which render them unable to attend regular school programs. And that's really under the guidance and support of a medical doctor's order for the period of the disability. And so that the district is required and responsible for making sure that if the student is going to be out 2 weeks or longer, that we can help support them in their academic schoolwork and endeavors. But that brings us to the virtual option, something that we want to offer our students next year. And I just want to be really clear with this virtual option that, again, we are fully preparing our students for in-person learning in the fall of 2021. But we also believe, and with that, we believe that all students deserve their education and their educational needs are usually best met in person on our campuses and with our teachers, supportive staff, and their classmates. We do recognize, however, that a remote learning environment may be the best option for some students and families, depending on their situation. The California Department of Education lists a few possible reasons why a student may be eligible for the virtual learning independent study option. And among those on their website, among the things that they list are students who are highly gifted and utilizing this independent study option for the purposes of acceleration in their education. Another option might be for students who face a particular challenge. And while that's not defined what a particular challenge is, there are many things that could be an example of what a particular challenge might be. For this learning option, a particular challenge could be that a student needs to work in order to help support their families, parents who may have lost their jobs during the COVID pandemic. Another student who may face a particular challenge may be a student who lives in a multi-generational household, and maybe grandparents and or aunt or uncle have health conditions that really don't want to, at this point, they don't want to risk bringing, the COVID into the home by going outside and participating in the independent learning, in-person learning. And finally, I would say students who want an individualized approach to delve further in a particular interest, or students who are at risk of dropping out of school. But above all, and I'm paraphrasing this paragraph here, it's really a sentence, but independent study is not for all students. And this is coming from the California Department of Education, and we happen to agree with this statement. Independent study requires basic academic skills and a level of commitment, motivation, and organizational skills, and also a self-direction that is not unlike the level required by college students. So independent study, again, really means that you're committed, you're motivated, you're organized, and you're self-directed, meaning that a lot of the learning takes place in what we've grown to know as asynchronous learning, away from the teacher. So what does this look like at our elementary and secondary virtual sites? So the elementary virtual experience would have homeschool enrollment, meaning you would still be affiliated with your elementary homeschool in your designated living area. We are offering grades 1 through 5. We are not offering pre-K, TK, or kindergarten at this time. We are only offering grades 1 through 5 for next year. Scholars who decide and families who decide to take the virtual learning option will receive all of their instruction for English language arts, English language development, math, science, music, and PE with the classroom teacher using their adopted texts. And we say classroom teacher, we're talking about a live teacher. There'll be a social and emotional learning piece to their schooling, and synchronous and asynchronous learning will be occurring during that time. What does that mean to have all of that content by a classroom teacher? It really will look in many ways like distance learning has looked for our elementary students this year. It will mirror a lot of ways what distance learning looks like this year. There'll be asynchronous and synchronous components to the learning, meaning some of it will happen with the teacher, some of it will happen outside of the teacher time. And we are asking for a 1-year commitment to this virtual learning experience. I just want to be clear that the 1-year commitment doesn't mean that you will never be able to change your mind. What it means is it needs to be a message to families and students that we want you to commit to the 1 year for a variety of reasons. For one, we know that by making this commitment, everyone in it is going to be doing their very best to make this the very best learning experience. Two, it's very difficult to have students going in and out of different programs because we do have contractual language with our teachers, and for safety purposes, we only can allow so many students in any one given classroom regardless because of spacing. And so with that being said, if by example, and for example, you're a 3rd grade student at Foothill Elementary School who decides to sign up for elementary virtual learning, and in around October decides that it's not really working out for you, Can you go back into third grade at Foothill? The answer to that is sure, if there is space. And space is not a guarantee, because by committing to the virtual, you're committing your seat to the virtual academy, and that really takes the seat out of the regular elementary setting. So if there's space, absolutely, we can work on that possibility of going back. If there's not, it'll be a longer process, and there is no guarantees that there will be space once you make your commitment. For the secondary virtual experience, it'll be similar in terms of being a homeschool enrollment. You'll still have affiliation with your home school in a sense. So if you're an MLK student, you would still have affiliation with Martin Luther King Junior High School. If you're a Pittsburgh High School student, you'll still have affiliation with Pittsburgh High School. But your coursework will be primarily completed online with the Edgenuity curriculum, meaning that you'll be assigned to a teacher who will be a manager of sorts, your teacher of record, but a lot of your coursework is going to occur online. We will have open hours to support. Think of it as maybe a math lab for complex math issues or extra help that's needed with math. We will have an online hour for history, for example, science, really the 4 core areas, definitely. And those will just be opportunities for students to get questions answered. But again, most of the coursework is going to occur in online learning with the Edgenuity curriculum. We will have some social emotional learning going on as well. We'll have Zoom meeting times for the students who are participating in the virtual experience. And there'll be individual times with their teachers, as well as some group times for social emotional activities. But I want to emphasize that for grades 6 through 12, the vast majority of the learning and experience will be asynchronous, meaning it will be non-classroom time. And again, this is a similar 1-year commitment because it's very challenging for a student to really be committed to doing that work and to learning that way in that new style. And it's also very challenging to move students in and out due to a variety of things, getting acclimated then with the actual classroom. And of course, again, as I mentioned with the elementaries, the spacing, because it does become an issue where there is space for a student to transition in and or out of school. So I wanted to just review quickly with you some targets on our timeline, and they are subject to change, of course. Things will move quickly from here on out. We did, the staff, the Pittsburgh Unified School District staff, did give the board a presentation regarding the virtual learning opportunities just last Wednesday, May 12th. The initial parent information webinars, which is really getting the information out there to all of you tonight that this is going to be an option. Again, this is a very broad overview of what that option looks like, but we wanted you to start being able to think about if this is something that you want to, possibly sign up for, or at least getting more information on. And those webinars are this evening, and then the Spanish speaking webinar is on the 20th, which is Thursday. On Friday, we will be sending interest surveys out to families after the webinars. And at that time, you're going to be just letting us know your general interest. Families who are interested in the virtual learning option, independent study option for next year, will just return their survey to the district, letting us know. So that way we know roundabout the numbers of interested families. And so also that way we can do a better job of directly tailoring the future webinars, which will then be coming up for you in the beginning of June, which is really just a couple of weeks away. And during those webinars at the beginning of June, we'll be giving you much more information as it directly affects your child's academic level, meaning do you need more information at the elementary that's very targeted to what does it look like for my 3rd grader or my 4th grader versus what does it look like for my junior high school student? And then there'll be a separate webinar for high school students as well. And so then we will be able to really give you more targeted and specific information. And that's when applications will also be going out to all interested families. And at that time, we're going to ask you to submit your applications for us so that way we can begin the student selection process. And the student selection process is really going to begin in mid-June. And that's the same time that staff is going to be hired. We're going to be advertising the positions for staffing just this week, and we'll be in fine shape to get that staffing completed and to start selecting our students in mid-June. And then finally, in mid to late June, we'll be letting families know whether or not their child or children have been selected to participate in the virtual learning option. This is a process because it's very important to us to really look through the applications and to really make sure that if there's any question on whether or not your child may be successful in this environment, that we really talk it through with you to make sure that you understand why we may have some reservations for your child to participate and or what other options might be available. It's really just to be good counselors in that sense for your child's academic and social emotional well-being. And at that time, there'll really be a dialogue going on between the families who are putting their applications in and staff. And then finally, you'll see that in early August to mid-August, we'll have a student and family orientation, and that will also be by program. And that will be an opportunity for you to meet your child's teachers and the principal and the counselor and the staff that's really going to be working with you and your family during the 2021-2022 school year, from the beginning through the end. And so finally, that leads us right on to the first day of school, which is August 11th. And we're going to be very excited to open up to all of our families and students specifically in this new virtual learning opportunity. And with that said, that's really it for now. But I do want to definitely open it up to some questions. I'm not sure if staff is able to ask us any specific questions.
Mr. Molina, there's a question in regards to scholars being able to switch in the middle of the school year. So if you could talk about that one more time.
Yes, that's a great question. That's going to be a question that probably will come up. There will be an opportunity to switch if there is space. I want to emphasize that we are asking for a 1-year commitment for scholars to participate in this program. If it's not working out for your scholar, for your child, we want to do our best to get them into a situation where it is working out. But that space doesn't necessarily mean it will be at their school. And so that's where things will take time, and it won't necessarily be guaranteed that your child will be going back to the school where they would have started in the fall.
That was asked in both directions. If they start in person, can they go back and become virtual?
That's a great question as well. So absolutely, as long as there is space. And right now, until we get the survey results from the parents and until we get that first initial staffing done, we won't know exactly what that looks like. So all things being equal, we will absolutely do the same thing if for families and students, it makes sense that there's some sort of struggle happening in person or something has come up with the family that makes it necessary for them to go into the independent virtual option, then of course we'll do everything we can to make that happen as well.
Selection or acceptance process is also a question for some people. It sounded like you were saying they could opt for it, but then it sounds like the district will decide. What's the actual process?
Yes, correct. Good, very good. So again, we don't know all of our numbers yet. For one, space is somewhat limited in a sense, but more than that, we really want to make sure that this is the right option for every one of our scholars. Every student has different needs. And so we're going to be looking at the application process. First of all, what is it that the parents and the family are seeking? And what does the students need? And then secondly, we'll be looking at some of our data points, some of the students' successes, some of the students' challenges, some of the supports that we have already in the district that might be best suited for the student. So it's both. Thank you, Mr. Rocap. To those parents who are wondering, it's both. There will be an application where you'll be telling us why your child really is selecting, why you're selecting this option for your child. And then we'll be looking through just to make sure that if there's anything we see that makes sense, we can, and support them in other ways, that we can do that as well. So that's where that stands. There is an application process. That's the clearest I can be on that.
I'm going to pop in quick. I see a lot of questions on the vaccination and if it's required. So I'll go ahead and clarify that. I typed a few in there. So right now, the vaccination for COVID-19 is not required. So it is available. It is free. And it is approved for anyone who was 12 and older. So the Pfizer vaccine has been approved for 12 to 15-year-olds, and the other vaccines are approved for 16 and over. And so again, it is free and is available. It is not required. So that is a law that would have to pass from the state. And that's what happens with your other vaccinations. So if and when the state decides to make that a law for it to be for schools, then we would, of course, follow that law like we do with your other vaccinations that you do with registration. But it is not required right now.
There's also a question in our chat that's come up a couple times about those students who are participating in the virtual academy. Will they be able to participate in on-campus activities?
Yes, students will be able to participate in on-campus activities. And there's a variety of different activities that occur, but the answer to that is yes. I happen to be seeing a lot of questions about masks, and I know that's in the news right now. So masks, we're following the guidelines as they currently stand from our state and county. And so although the CDC has come out with information regarding masks, we haven't received any updates, but as we do, we'll be following the guidance of the state and county as it pertains to masks. After school program, I'm seeing a couple in the chat. Until my staff pops in, I'm going to start sharing some things I'm seeing in the chat. But after school program will be in person this coming school year. So after school program will be in person this coming school year. And while I'm going to plug also, check out our website because we have a lot of cool activities in person that our after school program is running for the summer as well.
Some people have asked about whether there's a way to know exactly what kinds of courses, I think mostly at the secondary level, will actually be available through virtual learning. Like what's the catalog, right?
Deborah Petrick is our secondary coordinator for instruction, and Deborah can share a couple of examples of courses that are available in the secondary realm.
Yes, so we have all core courses will be offered. Their AP courses will be available, as well as all of our typical core courses. There will be elective offerings available as well, but not as many of our specialty programs as you see on our campuses. I know someone specifically asked about like the biomedical program or the engineering program. There will not necessarily be that full offering as what we see on campus, but there will be elective offerings. There will be some CTE offerings available. There are offerings such as art within those elective options for this particular program.
Mr. Molina, I'm also seeing a few questions around classroom safety for those parents who are trying to make a decision about whether to choose the virtual option for their family or return in person.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I really want to emphasize, and I tried to lead this presentation off by emphasizing Our classrooms are safe and our schools are ready for our scholars. We are excited to welcome our scholars back. We want to be safe for ourselves, and we certainly want to be safe for your children. And so we have everything put in place that we could be open today. We will be open in the summer, and we certainly are going to be open in the fall. And we strongly encourage and really support the in-person learning component. We think it's essential in every way, psychologically, academically, in every way for our scholars to be back. But we just understand that there are some who are going to need the virtual learning aspect. But I want any parent who's here tonight who is concerned about whether or not our campuses are ready to be safe for our students to know that they are ready, and we are going to practice safety, and we are going to do our best to keep all of our scholars and staff absolutely safe.
Related to that, Anthony, there's a question. Some people are hearing that it's going to open fully without any, they're asking like, so there'll be no distancing, it'll just be full classes as usual, or what will be the guidelines?
Well, right now we have our guidelines of 3 feet. And so we're going to be maintaining 3 feet. As things have changed, we've all seen these things change, but we are always committed to following the guidance because science is ruling what the decisions are that are being made. And so we're always going to be following the guidance of the county and state to make sure that we have the proper environments and the number of students. We also have one of our safety officers for our school district who goes to all of the county meetings and trainings and really helps support us in all of our decision making, as well as the superintendent is involved in a number of high level conversations at the county and with county health officials. And so we have the very best guidance to help us make the decisions that we make in order to ensure that those safety protocols are followed.
And I want to add in too. So the governor has announced that on June 15th, the blueprint and the tiers that go with each of the colors of where a county is and the different things that are allowed and not allowed, that those are being lifted on June 15th. We have not yet received guidance from the state about what that means for schools, other than for the state saying very clearly that we are to have full in-person school. And so we expect that on the 15th or before, we should get some other guidance from the state to specify it. But for now, what we're planning on is that masks are still required in the state of California, and masks are still required in schools, even with the CDC announcement. So we are planned and staffed to have multiple masks available for all of our scholars and staff. And then we'll have our other safety features that we will keep. For example, we've upgraded our ventilation. We've upgraded the filters that go in for that ventilation. We installed the hand sanitizers in all of our classrooms and throughout our school buildings. We're going to keep those best practices as well too. Right now, the guidance is 3 feet, and if it changes with the lifting of the tiers, then we will of course adjust for that as well.
There was also a question that came up in the chat regarding this current year's 9th graders, given that they did not have the opportunity to have, our typical 9th grade orientation. I know that there is discussion and desire and planning to welcome all of our students who did not have the opportunity to be on campus this year at the beginning of next year. Details around that will definitely be coming out from the sites as we get closer to the beginning of the year. But we absolutely have that in mind, thinking about all of our students that we want to welcome back who haven't had a chance to get to know their campuses, their new campuses yet.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Petrick.
As usual, a number of questions about special education. And will the virtual learning option be able to meet the needs of special education students? If yes, please explain how is one question.
So sure, we have obligations to fulfill with our special needs students, our scholars. And so it really is going to be dependent upon how many special ed families sign up, but we will definitely look at we may need to rewrite some IEPs, but we'll look at the definite how to best support those students by, you know, meeting the needs in their IEPs, whether that be staffing, accommodations, modifications with the curriculum, and more than that, that also speaks to what counseling will happen with staff as well. So that way, our special education staff can counsel our parents on what that looks like, and have a conversation about that, because it might be that through a conversation, parents and student decide that they don't want that, or maybe they're convinced that they really do want that option of virtual learning. So that's the same thing with our English learner families, accessing the English language. And that's what I meant when I said a lot of students have different needs. We're a very diverse district in many different ways. And so with that, it's going to be very important that we talk with our families specifically about what their situation is. And so going back to the special education, we will have services available in the independent virtual option. It's just a matter of making sure that the family, the scholar, the staff is on the same page. And so that way we can best support that specific scholar in that environment.
The other question is distinguishing. I think it's not necessarily clear that virtual learning as independent study versus just being able to choose a distance learning option like we have this year. So some people are saying, what would be the equivalent of this year's distance learning option versus this virtual independent study? It's the virtual independent study is what we're offering, correct?
Not correct, exactly. So it will look very similar in the elementary school grades. The virtual independent study option will look very similar in the elementary grades 1 through 5. It will not be exactly the same because we're going to have to work on having the students in class for more time, for one. So it's not like they would just be going once a week or even, a few hours a day. And for two, there'd have to be more emphasis on some of the other supports and curricular guidance that we would normally have in a regular school year. For the secondary, I want to reemphasize that a lot of it will be asynchronous time, and they'll be using the online curriculum that Ms. Petrick was speaking to just a little bit earlier with the different classes that are available to take online. They'll be assigned to a teacher, and teachers will be there to support students, but their main teacher will be the teacher for that specific course content that's online programming. And that's the same for the high school virtual learning component as well. And I know class sizes, I do see some things still on class sizes. A chat just popped up. Class sizes, number one, I won't go through all of our regulations for class sizes, but they are online as part of our contract with our teachers. You can see that one thing is we can't just shove, and we wouldn't want to anyways, shove any number of students that we want into a classroom. And so we do have outline class sizes that we have to adhere to. And they definitely fit in our classes. And if there's any guidance specific to the 3 feet distancing like we have now, even for summer programs, we've already gone through our classrooms and measured that out to make sure that we don't put too many students in our classrooms. So we are following the correct guidance, and we're also following our contractual obligations. Any other questions, maybe big idea questions that maybe we've missed to the staff? I'm asking the staff.
I know a lot of questions have surfaced in regards to our DI students. We know that the best way for our students who are leveraging 2 languages is to provide them with that in-person support. So, I mean, in order for them to be able to have the access to that support and as well as that authentic immersion to the language, it will be ideal for students who are participating with us in the dual language program to attend in person.
Thank you, Sandra.
Was a question about critical race theory. Are we implementing critical race theory?
We are, as a staff, we have been through a number of trainings on critical race theory. Our campuses have equity teams at all of our school sites, and we are best learning how to implement what our learnings are in making sure that we have equitable practices at all of our sites. Any other big items, big questions?
The other question, I guess, has more to do is if they're coming in person, what about transportation? Do we have an update on what school busing will look like?
I can answer that. Our transportation will stay the same. So our transportation, we will still have our transportation just like we do every other year. So we will not make any reductions in our transportation as well too. And so even this year, they did change some of the guidance on transportation because it is a shorter amount of time and having the windows open as well too. But in terms of any masking requirements or whatever, of course, we'll follow that if they're still in place. But, we will still be providing transportation.
Any other questions?
Yeah, definitely some around the short-term independent study versus the virtual academy. Could we take some time to maybe explain that a little bit more?
Yes. Short term is exactly what it sounds like. It's for a limited amount of time. And so if a family is going to be gone for more than 5 days, but let's say for like 10, days, then we can work with this child's teacher and put them on a short-term independent study so that they're not marked, absence and or dropped from the school, but instead they can have some work or assignments that they can be completing. And so that way, when they come back, they are joining their classmates and hopefully with very little learning loss. Versus the virtual academy, which is really online learning, and it's meant to be for the year. It truly is meant to be for the year.
And short-term independent study has always existed in our district. And so there's no change to that. We just want to make sure people are aware of it, but short-term independent study has always existed. So that remains as an option for those unique situations.
One important clarification. I think what one person, maybe others are hearing, they're saying, is there a chance a student will be denied in-person learning due to limited space? Well, that was only in relation to switching from virtual to in-person, but not in general.
Correct. Our in-person, that is just like every other school year, we want you all in person at school and you would not be denied. Just like in every other school year, if we do have a school that reaches its maximum and you're a new family coming in, we do have that overflow process, but we're not anticipating that, especially in our elementary schools. And so, yes, we want you here. It is in person and there is space. If you are a family who chooses virtual and is accepted for the virtual and then want to return to in-person, then it will depend on the specific class size that's available when you want to make that transition. And of course, we'll accommodate you as much as we can. So that might be a situation where the 5th grade classroom at your home school is full, but maybe there's a 5th grade classroom at another school. And so that would be an example of that for someone who's already in distance. I'm also seeing some questions about the meal service. So I just want to take this opportunity too to say that we are able to provide free meals for anyone who is 18 and under throughout the summer and throughout all of next school year. So we will continue the free meal service throughout the summer and throughout all of next school year. And so that is something that the federal government has extended with that. And there's some questions about being able to eat. We will have food on campus. So schools that are back now, some are doing that and having the food, but that will be allowed, and we will have our meal service up and running. And again, throughout this summer, we will be setting our summer meal spaces for families to pick up meals, just like you're doing now as well too.
There's a couple of questions about the staff for the virtual academy. Will it be staffed by Pittsburgh teachers? Will it be staffed by teachers from other districts? Who will be teaching our children in the virtual academy?
That, we have not done the hiring for that staff. I do want to say we have 4 current independent study teachers who will be following the current traditional independent study model. But other than those 4 staff members, we have to hire all of the remaining staff members. They may come from within the district. They may come from outside of the district. So we just can't answer that question right now.
But once we do hire them, they will be Pittsburgh Unified School District teachers.
Correct.
That. But we anticipate most will be our current teachers. But we have to go through our process.
Mr. Molina, there's a number of questions in regards to the process. Should a family be denied access to virtual, what would be the process for them to be able to continue to appeal for staying in virtual learning?
Yeah, so there can definitely be, an appeal, but ultimately we're going to try to make accommodations for all of our families. In the event that there are no more spaces and there is a situation in that, and we're part of that situation, then, we're going to allow the family to know that we went through the process, but also to probably start a wait list for one thing. And then beyond that, we really don't have the numbers yet of who's interested. So it's hard to tell beyond a wait list. But definitely we want to try to, support all of our families as best we can by meeting their needs.
And part of our do families have to make a decision tonight?
No, families do not have to make a decision tonight. This is the first piece of information that we're giving, just so parents know. Again, if I can just go back for a second, just remember that tonight we are here. We are in the initial parent webinar format. We're going to be sending interest surveys to our families at the end of this week, right? And then we'll have, after that, then we'll begin sending out applications to our interested families for students to be selected. And that's when we'll be having more in-depth information given to our families with more information via a webinar. And at that point, then families would really need to make that commitment to whether or not they want to participate. But we know you're just getting right now the initial piece of information. This is just so you can start thinking about if this is something you want to pursue. Great questions. Really appreciate all of the questions. Do we have time for one more, staff? Do we have anything else that's kind of burning out there? Burning questions?
School uniforms. Will they be required next school year?
I anticipate school uniforms will be required next school year. They have been a requirement in Pittsburgh for many years. And so I don't see that changing at this time.
And one other question is around lunch and recess. What would those look like for students who are back at school? in person?
Again, as Dr. Schultz said, we'll know more after June 15th in terms of what that looks like specifically for next year. But based on the current guidance and guidelines, we are cohorting our students. We're making sure that the groups of students primarily stay together, and so that they learn together, that they practice safe practices. Being out on the playground, for example, at the elementary schools. I should let Ms. Chin here speak to this. Ms. Chin, did you want to talk about what playtime looks like at the elementary school level, recess specifically?
My anticipation is when we return back to school next year in full in-person learning, right? It will mirror what happened prior to COVID, which is 2019-20, right? We will follow all the guidelines, but our anticipation is recess and activities will be prior to our release from COVID.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize, we have a number of former elementary principals in this staff here, but I want to emphasize, I've been on quite a few elementary recess playgrounds, and there's a lot of group activity, but there's a lot of personal activity as well. There's a lot of personal ball bouncing. There's a lot of personal time to walk around. There's a lot of activities that don't necessarily include directly interacting with someone in a physical manner. And so that is something that I also want to highlight, that every student still has the opportunity for their own personal space, of course.
I think just as a reminder that this session is being recorded, and so we'll be up on our website shortly for you to rewatch or to share with another PUSD family, but it will be available on our website.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming to us this evening. This is, again, the first step in a process for you gathering information, right? This is the first time you've been exposed to this information. Some of you may have had some of your questions answered. Others may still have questions that are unanswered, and that's okay, because we're going to be meeting again to give you more information shortly. Please be on the lookout for the surveys, the interest surveys that will be going out to you at the end of this week, and make sure you indicate to us and completely fill out each survey, so that way we know to contact you for more further information. With that being said, I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight. And Dr. Schultz, did you want to say a few words in closing?
And thank you to everyone who is attending. We will take the questions from the chat and a lot of the answers that we've been given, and also in the Q&A, and put together an FAQ so that you have that as well too. And just thank you very much. And again, want to encourage everyone, if you haven't already done so, take advantage of the vaccination clinic that we will have at Pittsburgh High School next week, Tuesday through Saturday, 8 to 3. You did receive information, but if you did not get it, just ask your child's principal. And there is a way, it's also on our Facebook, where you can make an appointment, but you are also welcome to do a walk-in as well too. And so just want to remind everyone that that is next week. And then they will come back 3 weeks later for everyone who is receiving the vaccination that requires the 2 doses. They will also come back the 3 weeks later, the Tuesday through Saturday at Pittsburgh High School for the 2nd dose as well too, for anyone who gets the one requiring the 2 doses. Like I did with the Pfizer one. So I want to thank everyone so much. And again, thank you for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.